Hi, so hello everyone. If you're here for the Fusion Cloud webinar, then you're in the right place. And we're dead on time now, so let's get going. So, short introduction. My name is David Tattersall. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Integral. Integral is the company behind all the Fusion products: Reactor, Fusion Analytics, Fusion Cloud, Fusion Debug. We're actually located in Germany. That's where our HQ are. And we've also got a company in the US and also in the UK. So what's the agenda for today, for today's webinar? First of all, I'm going to go over some highlights of FusionReactor, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about product positioning, so where FusionReactor, Fusion Analytics, and FusionReactor Cloud stand against each other, how they're positioned. I'll then take a look at some facts, so give you sort of an overview of FusionReactor Cloud. Then I'm going to jump straight into the demonstration. Then I'll provide a short summary of the things that you've seen, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about where we're going with FusionReactor Cloud, so what the roadmap is, and at the end we'll have some time for Q&A. And if anybody's got any questions, I believe you can post questions as well, and if I see those questions coming in, I'll if I recognize them, I'll try and respond straight away. If not, then I believe the system that we're using captures all your, will capture the questions and capture your contact details, and we'll definitely make sure that we get back to you and answer your questions if I don't get through to them during the webinar. So you'll have to excuse me a little bit. This is the first time I've used this software, so if something goes horribly wrong, then that's the reason why. Okay, so next slide, FusionReactor highlights. Okay, so where are we? So FusionReactor 1.0 was launched back in December 2005, so we've just been going now for just over 11 years. As you probably know, we launched FusionReactor 6 back at the end of 2015. FusionReactor Cloud, we actually did a sort of an extended beta. So we ran the beta for probably about almost a year actually, and we started migrating customers who had been using the beta software around about I think it was about August, September of last year. We started moving customers from the beta into actually paying customers. And what's coming up? Now we've got FusionReactor 7, which is planned for this year. Hopefully that won't be too long. We expect FusionReactor 7 should be out by summer. So FusionReactor has now been purchased by just over 5,000 customers since we launched. Those customers are really in almost all industries and segments. We've got over 25,000 servers running FusionReactor. And with FusionReactor Cloud, we're already processing billions of transactions per month. Right now, there's not too many customers who've moved over to the cloud because, like I said, we really did a soft launch rather than a big bang launch. We wanted to get into it steadily, and yeah, like I said, we're actually processing billions of transactions per month. So it's quite an interesting learning process going from a pure product company into a product and service company. We're the global market leader for monitoring Adobe Cold Fusion, Rhino, and Lucy. And since we launched with FusionReactor 6, we've actually been expanding further into the Java monitoring space. So that's also going pretty good. And I don't know whether anybody's noticed, but if you go to our website, you'll see we've got an independent review. And as you can see right now, we're at 4.8. Which we are very, very proud of. We've had 157 reviews up to today. And if you have some time to go through and read some of the reviews, they are pretty amazing, really. So we're very proud of what our customers have said about the software. So FusionReactor product positioning. As you're aware, we've got the three products: FusionReactor on-premise, Fusion Analytics, which is also an on-premise piece of software, and FusionReactor Cloud. So the goal with FusionReactor itself really is to rapidly detect and diagnose and isolate application issues and performance bottlenecks. FusionReactor really stands out by the fact that we've introduced now this low overhead debugger and the profiler, and with FusionReactor 7 we're going to be introducing a memory analyzer. And these were, or still are, really traditional developer tools which you'd only have in a development or test environment. And where we're going with FusionReactor is really by being able to provide those tools. We're introducing a completely different way to analyze and get to the root of problems in production environments. So those types of tools have never been available in a production environment previously, and we've made them safe, we've made them very performant, and in doing that we really believe that we're leading the way, if you like, in what monitoring should really be about, by being able to get to the root of the problems as fast as possible. With Fusion Analytics, the goal of that product is to create actionable intelligence by mining, reconciling, and interpreting all the current and historical data, so all the metric data which was captured by FusionReactor. So if you're using Fusion Analytics, that would require FusionReactor. It's sold separately to FusionReactor, but Fusion Analytics basically takes all the log data that's been provided by FusionReactor and analyzes it, generates a lot of reports, some very detailed reports, and sends out emails on that information, and lets you analyze data across potentially days, weeks, months, or even years. And with FusionReactor Cloud, that is a software as a service product. It's giving you access to real-time as well as historical application server metric data. And FusionReactor Cloud also includes a very sophisticated alerting engine, which we believe will be very useful for DevOps and operations people, as well as developers, of course. So some facts about FusionReactor Cloud. It's running on Amazon Web Services. The licensing model, let's say a few words about that. So with the advent of FusionReactor Cloud, we're changing how the licensing is done, and we want to try and accommodate a more flexible model which supports static and dynamic server monitoring. So just like you can do today, you can purchase a license for a host or a server, and just like today, you'd purchase that for a specific period of time. So you can buy a monthly license, or you can buy an annual subscription license. Obviously, the cloud, we're only dealing with subscription licenses. And for the cloud, you can think of this period of time. If you take, say, a month, you can think of this as a bucket of time which contains up to 750 hours. So if you've just got one, let's say you've got one server which you've purchased a cloud license for, then that server would come online. It'd be usually online all the time, and it would use up that month's amount of data, and everything's good. But let's say, for example, you've purchased that one server, but now you introduce a second server, and that second server actually only comes online for, say, 24 hours within the month. So this time where that server was online, that's basically taken out of your bucket of 750 hours. And then when you get to the end of the month, you'd actually have the whole month which you'd reserved, plus you'd have 24 hours of extra time. And that 24 hours of extra time would be calculated dynamically, and that's what you'd be charged for extra. And that dynamic rate is charged at a slightly higher rate than the reserved rate. And some of you may be wondering, how's this affected by, for example, by Docker instances? And what we're going to do here is we appreciate that there's quite a lot of customers now who are using Docker instances. And what we're going to have is we're going to support what we believe is a fair number of Docker instances as part of a host server reservation. So currently, how we've got this set up is each host or server will enable you to have 5 Docker instances in use in parallel, and all of those 5 Docker instances would be covered by your single host license. So if you have more than 5 Docker instances available, then this would effectively be the case equivalent to starting a second host server, and then we'd have the usual model to cover that as a second server. So just to repeat again so that everybody's got it, if you've got a single host, so let's say you buy one FusionReactor Cloud license, then that will support up to 5 Docker instances, all under that single cloud license. So that's the concept with the fair usage policy. We've got 2 cloud editions available, so Enterprise and Ultimate. There's no standard edition available as with the on-premise version. With data retention, we differentiate between high resolution data and lower resolution data. We're going to be storing the high-res data for 7 days, and the lower resolution, the aggregate data, which is built up each hour and each day, will be stored for up to 30 days. The pricing for Enterprise is $99 a month or $990 a year. So if you buy a year, you get 2 months free. And with Ultimate, it's $149 a month or $14.90 a year. So again, 2 months free on that. And what's very important is that if you take FusionReactor Cloud, that also includes FusionReactor on-premise. So the version that we've got today, obviously, the main version that we've had out there for years is FusionReactor on-premise, and that is included when you purchase FusionReactor Cloud. So you'll receive a cloud key, and when you install FusionReactor on your server, just like you do today, if you enter that cloud key, it will work in just the same way. But you'll also have a cloud account, and FusionReactor would then start sending data up to the cloud. Okay, so I'm going to go straight into the cloud demonstration now. Let me bring this up. Okay, so what you see here is the server application dashboard. And for those of you familiar with FusionReactor, I'm sure you'll also be familiar with the enterprise dashboard which we have. The server application dashboard in FusionReactor Cloud is quite a bit more sophisticated. We're able to show more information. And we're also able to configure the information that we see quite a lot more than we can with the regular enterprise dashboard. So for example, here up at the top, we've got account groups, which we've defined. So an account group, in this particular case, I've got two account groups here, demo instances and Jetty cluster. If I click on the view button here on the Jetty cluster, then I would only see the servers or instances which belong to that cluster. And if I click that again, then I'll basically see all the servers which I've got available. If I come up here and click into the server controls button, you can see these are some of the features which we've got available. So for example, in view, standard is the default view, which you can see here, but we've also got minimal, and on the minimal view, each online server is showing two specific metrics. These can actually be configured. All the Jetty ones are just showing web requests and average web time or average web request time here. And in my demo instance, I'm showing heap and instance CPU. I can also get a list of servers. And the idea here is, again, that we can customize this, and we've got the ability to show quite a lot of server information in a single window. And I've not got so many servers set up here, but this is sort of a rolling window. So we're only, if we were to scroll down through the servers, then we're not loading all the servers when the actual page loads. We're basically rendering the servers as we scroll down the page, so that improves performance as we're going along. We've also got such controls as text search. So if I go in here and I know what server I'm looking for example, if I search on demo, then I'm only going to see the demo instance. I'll just put that onto standard so that you can see that a little bit better. And yeah, we can also order servers by various different query results, such as how long the server's been online, what the instance name is, IP address, etc., etc. So quite a few more control capabilities there than we have with the current enterprise dashboard. And I'm going to set that to ascending order, and that should put demo instance here up at the top. And let's just take a look at demo instance now. If I go under the view button here and click on server settings, so when that comes up, what this enables us to do is set some values which will provide a visual warning on the server dashboard. So you can see here, I've actually got this configured now so that if my heap used is greater than or equal to 90%, then I'm going to see a warning come up, or if it goes over 96%, then I would see an error. And you can see down here below with the time period and the cooldown period. The time period is the period measured, so this 90% threshold value, it would have to reach that over a period of 5 minutes for this alert to be triggered. Okay, so what else can we do? I can increase the size of this window to see some more details. And another thing that we can do here is I can actually turn this into live mode. So right now I've got a 1-minute refresh in the dashboard here. But if I put this into live mode, you'll see that immediately something should happen, and we should, let's just put that into that guy. We should see here that the average web request time is updating, and this is actually updating in real time. So as soon as it goes to live, then things start updating straight away. So what's important to note is that we can only have one server in live mode at any one time. So you can't switch all servers into live. You can only have currently one server live per account. So I'm going to switch that off now. What else can we do? We can run something. So we've got a secure bidirectional channel between the cloud and the server which we're monitoring. And by having that, we can actually inject requests down into our server from the cloud. So if I click on garbage collection, you'll see here up at the top, garbage collection ran. And if I do a run and then say Stacktrace, then the Stacktrace ran, and you can see hopefully how quickly that actually ran. So I sent that request from the cloud to via AWS down to my server here in my office in Germany. I did a Stacktrace. I'm running a VM here with FusionReactor, and that generated a Stacktrace and sent it back up to the cloud. And it was really, there was quite a lot of data here. It was pretty much instantaneous that that occurred. So we've put a lot of effort into making that very, very performant and very, very fast. If I go here under View and then I click on the metrics page, so by doing that, the information that you see here, this is basically the information that you'd see in FusionReactor. So if I go under requests and then, for example, click on recent requests, this is now going down to my machine and pulling all my recent requests, and something should happen. It should refresh. So let me hit that again. Perhaps I didn't pick it up. Okay, that didn't seem to work for some reason. So let me refresh it again. Ah, yeah, there you go. Don't know why that didn't work. Normally it's instant. Demo effect. So that refresh, so you can see here, these are all the requests which have recently run. If I go under JDBC, I should be able to get the same information. So that came up instantly, and you can see here actually we're showing information in the select statement. You can actually see variable values, what we're actually searching for. You can obfuscate this data if you want to. So it's not 100% necessary to show this information. If you've got some issues with security or something, then you can obfuscate it, and then all the actual variable values would be removed. So just so that you know that's quite important. Another thing you can do here, let's say you saw some JDBC transaction that you didn't like the look of, or that you wanted to save and take a look at a later time, you can click Save. So all the transactions that you see, those transactions come up, then you can save them, and if you click on Save, there is the transaction which we just saved, and by clicking on it, you can see the transaction details. And if you click on the JDBC tag, then you see all the SQL statements which were performed on that particular request. If I go under resources and take a look at threads, this is also just like FusionReactor here. You can see all the threads which are currently running. I've got 13 which are runnable. I've got 48 which are waiting. I've got no blocked threads. And again, this is just like we've got in FusionReactor. If I click on the resources and run into graphs, again, this is the same sort of information. You can see here, this is the request time, and if I open up that dialog, all the information which we've got available in FusionReactor, we've also got available in the cloud. So for example, there's the CPU data. If I go on to Stacktrace, and I'm going to do a Stacktrace all. Again, this was very, very quick. You can see, again, there's quite a lot of information that's been returned here. So it's quite a lot of things running on this box. And again, I can take Stacktrace and I can save that Stacktrace, so, and I can annotate it. So let's say something was running poorly. So this request was running poorly. And if I save that and again go into my saved area, then there it is. And if I click on that, I'll see the Stacktrace again. And one thing which is quite interesting, actually I'm not going to show you on that one, I'll show you on this one. This is a bit more interesting. If I click here, you can see the Stacktrace, and if you'll notice, this is highlighted as a link here, and if I click on the do authentication link, what FusionReactor will do is it will actually decompile this on the fly. And this is a feature which we've introduced since FusionReactor 6, and which is actually only available in the Ultimate Edition. But this can be really useful because you may have something deployed where you don't have the source code available. And if you've got FusionReactor 6 deployed and the Ultimate Edition, then you can take a Stacktrace and actually just decompile it on the fly to be able to take a look at the code and see what it's doing without going back to your source repository. And this is definitely, what we're showing here is definitely the classes which were executed and which are currently running. So that's quite interesting. So now moving on, if I go into the applications view, and we can see here I've got a number of applications that we're running, and I'm going to go into this Spring application here. And what we can see is an application view, and this is very different to what we've got in FusionReactor now. And this is one of the differentiating features with FusionReactor Cloud, is that now we're able to aggregate data across a number of servers, and if all those servers or all those instances are all running the same application, then that data will be automatically aggregated and combined to give you a complete application view. So we can see here that we're looking at the amount of time spent. These are different actions which form this particular Spring application. If I come up to the top here, you can see this is actually showing the last 30 minutes. This is our time picker. If I open that, I can go show the last 60 minutes, or I can show the last 3 hours, or I can go back up to the last 7 days, and then I can keep going back. So as long as we've got the data available, I could do the last 7 days, and then the previous 7 days, the last 14 days, 21 days, 28 days, etc. So I'm going to put that back on to the last 30 minutes now. And if I move across and I move into the average here, and if I highlight one of these, so I can select one of these elements, and I've taken the products page, and this is quite interesting as well, because this is showing us the mean value is the dark point in the middle, and then the banded values basically highlight the deviation across values. So we can see here we've got a mean of 19.5, and there's a value up in, it looks around about 40, and down to around about 12 or something. So that was the maximum and the minimum value, and we've calculated the mean there. If I click on throughput, so slowest is obviously, this was the request that ran the slowest. Throughput is how many requests were processed for a specific action, or this could also be a cold fusion page. If I click on errors, errors is actually not just errors, but what we deem as interesting transactions. And you can see here we've had a number of interesting transactions. I can also filter these, so if I just wanted to see the ones that ran 500 milliseconds or above, then by clicking on the filter, it will instantly filter those values. And I can also take one of these if I see that something, I've got some issue here that I'd like to save and take a look at. I can still save that and go take a look at it at a later date. What else can we do here? Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick example here. So I'm going to actually generate an error. I've got a little JSP page, and I'm going to force this to cause an error. This is going to throw a null pointer exception. This particular page is expecting a string. If I pass a string into it, then what it will do is it just does a string length and then prints out the string which has been passed into it. But if I take the argument off and then I run that, then basically that throws a null pointer exception. And I can see that in FusionReactor. So if I go into FusionReactor here and on the web metrics page, and then I click the 500 internal server, you'll see here that I've got this null pointer, and if I click on that, then we see all the transaction details as you'd expect. We also see the error details, and if I click on the error details, then FusionReactor tells me that I got a null pointer exception, and I can see here my Stacktrace showing me that this was actually at line 116. Now, if I go back into the cloud, I should also be able to see this. So if I go back into my applications, and I go into my JSP test application, And what I should see is if I refresh this, so I've just had this error just occurred. This is the one that we just generated. And if I drill into this, then I also see that same information. So I see the stack trace, and if I scroll down, I see here this was caused by a null pointer exception. And again, we've got the link here. If I click on that link, then FusionReactor will decompile this on the fly, and it's actually highlighting now where this error occurred. So I can see that this occurred at line 116, and the error was caused by we were trying to perform a print, and argument was probably not initialized because we didn't pass arguments into our program. So this is a real good example to very, very quickly or instantly see where a specific problem was coming from. And if we go back to FusionReactor now, just to sort of show you the capability which we've got in FusionReactor Ultimate. So now I'm back in FusionReactor, and I'm back in the request that caused the problems for us. I can also do a decompile here, just the same as we did before. So that's also showing me line 116. But what I can also do here is, if I click on the file name, this was the culprit, then FusionReactor will allow me to set a breakpoint. And I'm going to set this breakpoint. I'm going to say that this breakpoint should only fire one time, so I'm only going to affect one thread with this, which is very important, that you wouldn't set a breakpoint that affects all threads in your system. And if this error occurs again, I'm actually going to pause. I'm going to pause that thread for 60 seconds. So I'll just show you this real quick. This is not FusionReactor in the cloud, but this will eventually be available in the cloud, and this is FusionReactor Ultimate. So if I confirm that now, you can see I set this breakpoint, and then I go back into my example and I run that again. You should be able to see the browser spinning up here, so this request has not run through to completion. And if I go back into FusionReactor, I'll see the bug for the production debugger, and if I click on that, this is my thread that's currently running, and you should be able to see time is now counting down. So I've got 34, 32, 31 seconds left. If I click on the debug icon, I'm now inside a full-blown IDE style debugger. This is all built into FusionReactor. Very, very low overhead. You're not seeing line 116 here because that was the Java that was generated. You're actually seeing the source code here. So this error occurred at line 8, where we were trying to do this print line on arg. I can see on the right-hand side here, I can see all the variables at the point where the breakpoint fired, and I can see that argument is equal to null. If I scroll down a little bit, I can see this is my stack, and very interestingly, I can actually traverse up and down the stack. So very often an error will have occurred higher up the stack, but that error gets propagated down and eventually it manifests itself at some point below, at some lower level in the stack. But with the production debugger, I can actually go up and down the stack, and you can see on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side, you can see the code changing, and on the right-hand side, you can see the variable context also changing as we go up and down the stack. And if I go back to the point where the error occurred, and then I can also, if I go into arg here, and I'm going to change this to whatever, some value, And this is just to demonstrate that this was the actual error that was caused. And if I change that and then click on resume, you can see this page instantly finishes, and it picked up the value, some value, and told us that string length was 10. So that's just a little aside to show you the debugging capability. So the next thing I'm going to show you now is the alerting capability. And if I click on alerts, you see here there's 3 tabs: alerts, checks, and subscriptions. Alerts is basically an audit trail of all the last alerts which we've received, and you can see there's been a number of alerts going off. Checks is the current alerting checks which we've got set up. And subscriptions shows us how we want to be alerted. So we've got a number of native integrations, for example in PagerDuty, HipChat, Twilio. We can send emails, we can do HTTP hooks. We've got a number of integrations, and a subscription basically defines how we're going to be alerted. So if we quickly set up a subscription here, so I'm going to call this Warn David on HipChat, and I only want to be warned on on Thursdays. I don't want to be warned over the weekend. And I'm going to select a service here, and I'm going to select HipChat. And in HipChat, this basically this automatically links to all the rooms which we've got set up in our HipChat account. And I'm going to take David's demo alerts. Let's take yellow as the color. And I'm going to save that subscription. So that's been created now. So you can see Warn David on HipChat, and if I test that, so this has sent a message out, and if I just bring my HipChat up, you can see we're at 442, and this was the alert which just got sent. And if I hit that again, and bring my screen up again, then you can see I've got another alert test there. So that's working. Now if I create a check, so just let me show you that. So if I create a check, let's say I'm going to create almost out of memory as our check, and I'll give that as the description. And then you can see here, I can choose either an instance, an application, or a group. I can choose from all the resources that we've got available to us. For example, the JDBC activity, memory, request activity, thread activity. There's all, like I said, all the resources that we've got available in FusionReactor we can actually create alerts on. And for this example, I'll just do memory percentage, and I'd select used because I want to see how much memory has been used. And then we could put some value in here. Let's say I'd like a warning at 95%, and I'd like to have an error if my available memory or memory used goes above 98%. And then I can set a time period. So this is a time period in which I want this check to take place. So I might say I want that over a time period of 5 minutes. And the cooldown period is the period which, if this particular alert fires, I don't want to be bothered again by another alert firing within this period of time. So I might say, okay, if this fires, then I want to wait for 15 minutes, and then within 15 minutes it would not fire again. I'd then go into, oh, I need to add an instance. And if I click on the instances, it automatically detects all the instances that I've got available. So I'm going to just put this on my demo instance. If I go through to subscriptions, then I can choose what I'd like to, what type of alert I'd like to take place. And in this case, I'm going to warn David on HipChat. And then I would save that check. And that's basically it. So now you see we've got a new check here almost out of memory. This one's pending, so this one's been triggered up to the alerting engine, and we're waiting for the alerting engine to now pick that up and enable it, and that normally happens within around a minute. But I'm going to show you one of the other checks that we've got running. So I've set up a check on my UEM, on my user experience monitoring, and this is a warning check. And if I open that one up, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll edit it, and then you can see that better. So if you this is my user experience monitoring check. This is also checking my instance. And I've taken as the resource here UEM, so user experience monitoring, and the metrics which I've got available to me are DB time, web request time, and time on network. And what I've said here is if my network UEM value exceeds a 400 millisecond threshold for on average for a time period of 5 minutes, then I want to receive a warning. And if it goes over 1,000 milliseconds, so over a second on average for a period of 5 minutes, then I would classify that as an error. And my subscription here, I've actually got another subscription that I've created called UEM Error Network Taking Too Long, which is also going to fire on HipChat. And if we go into the alerts, I should be able to show you this. So some of these have been going off. So you can see here the user experience monitoring check. And if I click on that one, then this is really neat. What this shows me now is why this particular alert fired. So I can actually see the values here. I can see the points where we started to measure, and I can see what my average value was, which caused the alert to fire. So if I close that, and then if I go through to my HipChat account, you can see here one of these fired at 4:25, and this was the alert which I received. So this was the same one that we saw before, and I've got a link in HipChat as well. If I click on the link, then as if by magic, that opens. It's actually opened in my other browser. That's how I've got it configured. But you can see the same information comes up, and that's showing me why that particular alert fired. So I'm going to close that and close that. And yeah, that was a quick demonstration of FusionReactor Cloud. And I'll just go back to my slides now. And just to give you a quick summary again, so with FusionReactor Cloud, so what did we see? We saw the dashboard. It's very configurable. We can set thresholds. We can group servers and applications. We're able to minimize the amount of data which we're seeing. So it's very suited to large-scale deployments. You saw the real-time updates through the bidirectional secure socket channel. We're able to send requests down to the server, such as a Stacktrace or a garbage collection, or execute scripts. So this is something which we're also thinking about, that you'd be able to, if you've got a script, let's say clean up file system script, that you could actually execute that via the cloud interface. One of the main features is now the application-centric monitoring. So rather than just having single request or transactional views, which you've currently got in FusionReactor on-premise, you can now aggregate server instances together and provide an application view. And as we've seen, you can break that down. You can look at individual transactions broken down by percentage of time taken, average, slowest, throughput, and the number of errors. We've got all the core monitoring features. So in the cloud, we're able to see so-called interesting transactions. These are transactions which were running slowly or which caused an error, and we've got the ability to save those requests, as well as saving stack traces. And you've also seen the alerting engine. It's very, very configurable. We've got integration with PagerDuty, HipChat, email, Slack. I think there's about a dozen different native integrations that we've got. So on to the last slide. So where are we going with FusionReactor Cloud? A few points about the future roadmap. So what we want to try and do is basically get alignment between FusionReactor and FusionReactor Cloud. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be providing features in the cloud which make sense in the cloud. So we won't have all the features which we've currently got in FusionReactor on-premise, but we do want to take the ones which we believe make sense. So for example, in the future, you'll be able to see profiling information, as well as the production debug interface. So what I demonstrated to you before in FusionReactor on-premise, that will also be available, providing you've got the Ultimate Edition. That will also be available in the cloud. We're also going to be offering tighter collaboration, peer communication, timeline event annotation. So if a server went down at a certain point, you'd be able to annotate that on a timeline and share that information with other engineers and with your peers. We're going to be doing more application detailed analysis. So an example here would be comparing applications across servers. So one thing we hear quite a lot is customers got a number of servers set up, and they're all running the same application, and for some strange reason one of these servers, which are all identical, is performing worse than all the other application servers. And in the future we'll be able to analyze that and basically compare an application across different servers. We're going to be enhancing the alerting capability, and we're going to be introducing some machine learning with what we call smart alerts. With the error reporting, for that we want to be doing things like introducing the ability to analyze if there was an unusual spike, for example, if under normal circumstances you do get some errors, but then suddenly you start getting more and more errors of a specific type, we'd pick that up straight away and we would highlight that, draw your attention to it, and you'd see that in the cloud dashboard. So that's the error reporting. And finally, one of the areas that we're going into is logging. So we're going to be capturing and providing the ability to view logs in the cloud interface. So for example, we'd be able to show you the Cold Fusion log. We're also going to introduce some smart analysis for logging. So for example, if you knew that some certain string was being picked up in your logs and you wanted to be made aware of that whenever that string was written into the log, then you'll be able to define that, and we would make you aware of that in the cloud when that particular string ended up in the log. So that's a little bit about what we're doing in the future. And now finally, the last slide is questions and answers. So we're coming up to the end of the presentation now. Timing wasn't too bad, that just took 55 minutes. I'm just wondering now if there's any questions that come in. There's been a couple of questions. So let me go through those quickly. First question, how granular is the user permissions when logging into the cloud account? How many different users can be authenticated to use the cloud account and data? That's a good question. You'll be able to have unlimited access, so unlimited number of accounts, and we've got different capabilities associated with those users, and based on those capabilities you will be able to do different things. So you'll be able to, for example, modify let's say the enterprise dashboard settings, or you'd be able to set up new alerts. So as far as I'm aware, that is all fairly configurable. So you'll be able to set up different users with different capabilities, and like I said, the number of users that you can set up is unlimited. Next question. Oh, that was actually it. Just that one question that's open. So let me make sure. Yeah, that's it. So if anybody has any further questions, please do feel free to contact us at the support team. You can give us a call, or just send an email to sales@fusion-reactor.com, and we'd be happy to get back to you and answer those questions. And also, if anybody who's attended would like to try out FusionReactor Cloud, then please just drop us an email, and we'd be happy to set you up with a trial account. It's the same trial like FusionReactor now, so it's a 14-day trial with FusionReactor Ultimate. So again, if anybody would be interested in trying out FusionReactor Cloud, then please do let us know, and we'd be happy to set that up for you. For those of you wondering, when's FusionReactor available to everybody? Right now we were able to sell it, but we're only able to sell it with an annual license, and the reason for that is because we're not quite finished with the monthly billing. So that's almost there now. All the development's been done. It's just going through QA, and as soon as that is completed, then the actual full-blown launch will be coming very soon afterwards. Okay, thank you to everybody for joining.